Under Mad Hancock, he's supreme, plugging the hemlock at spreading disease out of wedlock. She spread her knees under Mad Ad Hoc Hancock. Yes! Oh, welcome to NEWSPASTY. We're under Matt Hancock. We're over Matt Hancock. We're out of Matt Hancock. We're definitely over Matt Hancock. Is everybody here? Please, everybody in the room, can you raise your hand if anybody listening to this, are you over Matt Hancock? Are you done praising Matt Hancock? Are you done? If you did, you're a very bad person. And it was always going to tell in time, wasn't it? Anyway, what's this guy? What's he talking about? Let's find out.
I'm going to move on. That is the exercise, did result in,
I think he's
my
about
mind
to
at
use
least, an
control.
unresolved but fundamental ethical debate about a scenario in which a rising number of COVID patients overwhelmed the ability of hospitals to look after them and other non-COVID patients. The Secretary of State, that's Mr. Hancock, took the position that in this situation,
Hemlock,
rather than, say, the medical profession or the public, should ultimately decide who should live and who should die.
Oh my God! Is Hancock? He has power and control over everybody, grandmas especially, and the infirm especially, as always with any type of disease. He has the hand. He puts it over the top of them. He says, "You must die now. Bye bye," and he delivers the hemlock. That's what he does. It's Mad Hancock.
You say, fortunately, of course, that dilemma never actually crystallised.
No.
Just before
the dilemma. Can you imagine if you're in a nursing home? Oh, this is terrible. You're in a nursing home around COVID, and your loved one is dying in a bed, and you're not even allowed. You're looking through a window, and in comes Matt Hancock into the room. This one, take the life support away, and then hovers back out of the bathroom. I think that's how it. The bathroom, the bedroom. I think that's how it goes.
This, to note that, is it right that the previous Secretary of State, or possibly a previous Secretary of State, but Jeremy Hunt, had taken a different view of this matter, had he not? I think it was connected to exercise Cygnus, which had happened some years before. He had taken the view, and this is in fact something that he spoke about in evidence in Module 1 of this inquiry, that decisions of this type ought to be reserved to clinical staff.
Exercise Cygnus. Well, this is very interesting because the same sort of thing happened through the foot and mouth crisis, wasn't it? Same sort of thing. When the foot and mouth crisis happened, there was already a panel of people who were basically a SAGE type panel. I think it might have been an early version of SAGE, who basically decided on how to respond to well, in that case, it was an epidemic in the UK that was cut off to just the UK. So how to respond to the foot and mouth epidemic among livestock. And they had this panel of all of these different experts who had all worked in different sectors, including like the farming sectors and agriculture sectors and within disease control, even some from the big labs and stuff. And in come Roy Anderson and Neil Ferguson. Yeah, Neil Ferguson. And they decided how it all go, and no one else who has expertise had the right. So there was no more going to be ring vaccinations that had always worked in the past in every other foot and mouth outbreak. Instead, there was going to be pyres of 8 million burning cattle, and Roy Anderson decided who lived and died. Seems a bit familiar, seems a bit similar, seems a bit like it's all over again. Amazing that those same people were involved again. Not that amazing.
Is that something you're aware of?
Yes, I've heard Jeremy Hunt say that, yes.
So there you are. I mean, he took one view, and you're saying in your statement that on the 12th of February, Mr. Hancock
would hover over the bed, or it would be, I will kill this one. And Jeremy Hunt would hover in and go, no, spare him and his life, medicate him. No, says Hancock, turn the board round, I will kill him. This one must go. No, says Hunt. No, I am Hancock. I have the power. You have no power anymore.
a very different view. Did you have a view as to whether that was an appropriate line for
What's
him to
your
take,
view?
Desirable or not?
I thought it would be highly undesirable other
Go
than
on.
in the most extreme circumstances, and you can argue that these are the most extreme circumstances, and that is
Wow.
one of the reasons why the
You bent
Department of
over.
Health and Social Care, I think, created a ethical and moral advisory panel to sort of ask.
An ethical moral advisory panel is the most Orwellian a name for a type of a advisory panel you can get. What are you going to be looking into? Ethics and morals? Okay, and you're going to decide who lives and dies. Yes! Isn't that ethically and morally undesirable? Yes, you have seen our plan.
The question,
Call in
if
the Hancock.
absolute disaster strikes, then how would you ration care, limit it in a way that would be fairest and have the, be the most defensible under this, horrible situation. But I certainly wanted to discourage the idea that an individual Secretary of State, other than in the most exceptional circumstances, should be deciding how care would be provided. I felt.
But then the peacock Hancock would walk in the room with his amazing. He would look up at the clock and he would say, "I, Hancock, decider of who lives and dies. I've heard the last talk in this clock. So give me the Glock, and I shall put it next to this man's head, and I shall break this deadlock in the most ironic of ways. Oh, I make a mockery of this land. I am in control now. I am all powerful. I am Hancock. I am the decider of whether your loved ones lived or died."
If absolute disaster strikes, then how would you ration care, limit it in a way that would be fairest and have the, be the most defensible under this, horrible situation?
What would be the most defensible? Not what would be the best to do. What would be the most defensible? If we had to go up in court and defend ourselves, what would be the most defensible? Because we don't really care what we're doing. We just want to be able to get away with it afterwards, isn't it? It's got to be defensible.
But I certainly wanted to discourage the idea that
Go on.
an individual Secretary of State, other than in the most exceptional circumstances, should be deciding how care would be provided. I felt that we are well served by the medical profession in consultation with patients to the greatest extent possible, making.
I don't think that's true. I really don't think that the medical profession stood out as extremely good during this period, and I think a lot of people agree with me on that. And I think that it was always going to be time will tell, but there's still a lot of stalwarting. There's still a lot of people who want to believe that it was all angels. And was Matt Hancock an angel? No.
Those kinds of decisions.
No, he's a vampire
And is it
coming in your
something
room,
to your mind that
ending your grand's
was
life.
apparent earlier, or at least should have been considered earlier?
I think it was clear that if the reasonable worst case scenario were to come about in the UK, then the NHS would be overwhelmed.
I'm sorry, but the worst case scenario did happen in the UK, didn't it? Matt Hancock was in charge of health and social care. I mean, that has got to be Matt Hancock has managed to get to be the head of health and social care. That is probably the worst outcome.
And we had a group of our clinicians and analysts working, for example, intensely with the SPI-M modelers on Sunday, the 1st of March, to refine what the parameters might be for thinking about how many intensive care beds each sick patient might need and so forth. And that produced a set of scenarios.
That bored me. I know. But what they did, you remember what they did? They made a load of temporary healthcare facilities that didn't get any action, had loads of staff just waiting around because they had over-egged everything and tried to make everybody as scared as possible and gone, oh, but it could be the worst possibility because they had Neil Ferguson doing the modelling and Roy Anderson behind the scene pushing it, and their mate Jeremy Farrar doing the same, and the rest of the Welcome Five, Richard Sykes handling the entire vaccine rollout. I mean, this is Edward C. Holmes transcribing it and just happening to be in China. I mean, the whole thing was just tongue in cheek. And now what they're arguing about is, was Matt Hancock a nice person or was he a vampire killing your parents? Well, of course he was a vampire killing your parents or your grandparents. But the fact is that none of it matters because you all went along with it, you bastards. Yeah, I'm talking about most of them. Most of the people who will listen to this, if it was a random set of people, because probably the people who are listening to this are people who completely and utterly deplore what happened in reality, but there's going to be a load of others who just went along with it because they were like, I don't know what to do, I should just go along with it. And it was just awful. Even some people that I know who claim that they're against it all went along with it all behind the scenes because no one actually saw what people were doing when they were bending over. People don't always see other people bending over, you know.
That evening, Sunday the 2nd of March, Sage papers, as I see them now, on the 3rd of March 2020.
I'm probably telling you the worst possibility is likely to occur and everybody will die. Everybody's dead, Dave.
Have two separate papers, one from Imperial, one from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine.
Imperial would be maybe where Roy Anderson still was. I mean, he moved to Imperial in 2000 along with Neil Ferguson. Took the whole. They were at the Wellcome Oxford operation program that was running, and then he said a load of stuff about somebody and then had to leave, and he took all of his team and the Wellcome funding along with him over to Imperial, and they started instantly, I think soon after, switched to the modeling for foot and mouth when the crisis hadn't happened in the country for 30 years. No outbreak had happened, and 5 months later, suddenly the whole place was riddled with foot and mouth disease. It was a very convenient time for everything to happen. But that was Imperial, because that's where Roy Anderson hangs out, and Neil Ferguson and those lots, and they're modelling, and they're fucking you over.
Sage on the 3rd of March.
They're all involved in Sage as well. These people are all just like LinkedIn. It is highly likely
there is sustained transmission of COVID-19 in the UK at present. Secondly, they say...
What does that mean, though? I mean, what does that mean? Quick, let's just build massive, like, temporary hospitals with beds that are going to be thrown out at the end of it because Matt Hancock wants to say, I'm the hero who saved everybody.
Given current surveillance systems, it will not be possible to time the start of interventions optimally. And third, they say, whatever the exact figure, NHS demand will greatly exceed supply in a reasonable worst-case scenario, even with behavioural interventions and behavioural and social interventions.
But it didn't, did it? They say they tried to act like it did. This is a really interesting thing. A load of pasty involved in this at the time. I was talking to people when I was out walking the dog around this time that we're talking about here. I worked over in the hospital because I live very near a hospital, and loads of the people the place I live, like the area I live, is just basically populated by people who work at the hospital. So I got lots of insight. But there was one lady, and I was very honest. I mean, I'm very honest with people about my approach and my belief. Not everybody was down with it, of course. Some people were really against the way I saw it playing out. But this lady wanted to she's a proper doctor on the wards, she knows her stuff, but she was quoting stats at me that I just don't think were true. She was quoting stats about what was going on the wards, and later on I discovered that those stats had been a lot of those stats had been manipulated in a way that I thought that they'd been manipulated when I was talking to her, and she it's very interesting how they use certain stats to make people believe that something's much worse than it is, even when they're at the eye of the storm. It's what's so important. She was right in the center at pasty, and yet she was like, oh, what I'm seeing is what they're describing. Yeah, afterwards you look at it and it's like, well, that's not what they were describing at all. What the actual evidence shows later on is something different. But she was saying that was true. Now, that can't be her conspiring with it. She just believes what she's being told and she takes it on as matter of fact. That's what happens. You go to a workplace, they give you a standard operating procedure. You go, oh, yeah, I agree with that. And that's it.
So I think it is apparent that certainly by the beginning of March, it could be seen that if action was not taken to reduce the growth of COVID, then the NHS would be overwhelmed.
Bullshit. Didn't get overwhelmed.